morning, everyone. Thank you for signing on to today's webinar. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We're going to let folks come into the Zoom room before we jump into the content. So just stand by and we'll get rolling in just a minute. Thanks, everybody, for signing on for today's training. We're almost ready to go. Just giving people a few minutes to log in and get situated before we jump in. Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Edwin Colfax. I'm the Director of Grant Funding here at TIDC, and we'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on how to complete the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report, or IDER, and in particular, we're going to be introducing our new reporting website today. We're very excited about the upgraded technology that will hopefully make your reporting process run more smoothly. Today's session is focused specifically on the criminal and juvenile delinquency data that you report in the IDER. We have conducted a couple of trainings regarding the family protection or CPS sections of the IDER that are going to be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel and linked from our government website, tidc.texas.gov, very soon. But today's session will be focused on the criminal and juvenile delinquency sections of the IDER, and we will also be introducing the new OCA Court Interpretation Services report toward the end of our session today. We'll be joined by some colleagues from the Office of Court Administration. Today I'm joined by several of my colleagues at TIDC, including Dr. Sarah Gamble, TIDC's Research Director, who's been integral in helping to develop and roll out our new reporting website. Also, Deborah Stewart, TIDC's Fiscal Analyst. We also have Kristen Meeks from our Improvement Team, Director of Public Defense Improvement, and also Kenitra Brown on our Policy Team. So I'd like to thank my colleagues who are joining us today. And if they are not here already, a little bit later in our webinar, we'll be joined by some colleagues from the Office of Court Administration, Alejandra Pena, who's the Director of Judicial Information and Research, Angela Garcia, Lisa Robles, and Sherry Woodfin, all colleagues at the Office of Court Administration, who will speak to the new OCA Court Interpretation Services report. So we'll get to that in a little bit. A few housekeeping notes. We are recording today's session, and we will be posting it on our website, linking from our website soon. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel. Also want to let everyone know that the revised 2024 IDER reporting manual, the instructions, will be issued in a few days. Those are emailed and sent hard copy to all county financial officers, so county auditors, and if your county doesn't have an auditor, it'll go to the treasurer. But you can also access it in a few days on our website, tidc.texas.gov. The reporting manual is just being finalized to incorporate all of the updates to our new technology platform to provide you with good guidance on how to complete the report. For today's webinar, please use the Q&A window to submit questions. We are in a webinar format as opposed to a regular Zoom meeting format. And so if you type something into the chat, it's harder for us to manage and keep track of it. So please use the Q&A section to submit questions. We will be setting aside plenty of time toward the end of the presentation to answer your questions. Also, we do have these other trainings that are related to the IDER that will be posted very soon. As I mentioned, the session that is specifically focused on family protection representation sections or CPS cases on the IDER. Because there are enough differences in the way that the criminal and the CPS data is reported, we're breaking this into two separate sessions. So that is going to be linked from our website very soon. We also did a training on the attorney practice time reporting, not something that county financial officers typically are directly responsible for, but your attorneys who take appointments in your cases, in your counties rather, may be interested in taking a look at that training because that report, the attorney practice time report that attorneys submit to us, also has a new website platform. All right, so that's the housekeeping. Let's just jump in. So we are TIDC, the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, and our mission is protecting the right to counsel and improving public defense. And we do that through providing funding, oversight, and working with local jurisdictions to improve the system. The goals for today's session, first of all, we want to just give you an overview of the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. Some of you are new to the report. Many of you will be familiar with it from previous years, but we want to provide a quick summary and overview of what the IDER is and review the data that you report, particularly on the criminal and juvenile delinquency sections of the IDER in today's session. We also are going to introduce the new OCA Court Interpretation Services Report. This is technically not part of the IDER, but because it is a report that financial officers will be responsible for in consultation with your clerks, we have worked with OCA to build onto our existing IDER platform a place for you to go to submit this new OCA Court Interpretation Services Report. We'll touch on that later. Also, and really the main focus of our session today is to provide an in-depth demonstration of TIDC's new reporting website, with a special focus on the criminal and juvenile delinquency sections. And then we will also have plenty of time for Q&A. So that's what's coming up today. So what is the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report? The first thing to note is who is responsible, and that is all county auditors or financial officers of a county. If your county does not have an appointed auditor, the Commissioner's Court designates who is responsible for submitting the IDER, and that's typically the county treasurer if there's not an auditor in the county. It is an annual report of county indigent defense expenditures and cases. The due date is November 1st. That's a statutory date. I know sometimes we get questions about whether we can make extensions because it's written into statute. We can't technically extend the date, but if you are ever having issues regarding the deadline, you can always reach out to us to discuss the situation. Where do you report it? It's going to be on this new reporting website, which is our main topic today. Why do you have to do this? Well, it is a statutory requirement. The legislature does require this of all county financial officers. It also provides TIDC with really important data that we use for a number of different purposes, providing general oversight to see what to identify compliance issues regarding the requirements of the Fair Defense Act, to understand what the county's needs are. Another key reason why we collect this data is because it partially determines every county's TIDC formula grant each year. The formula grant is based partly on your county's population and also partly on your reported expenditures in the previous year. So we really need to know how much you're spending in order to gather data to work with you about all kinds of potential ways that we can work with your county, identify grant opportunities, et cetera. And how do you report it? Well, that's what we're going to be getting into in great detail today. So the new IDER on our new website is organized into 3 distinct modules. The criminal juvenile delinquency section, that's our topic today. The family protection IDER sections, which cover appointments in CPS cases, Child Protective Services cases. That training we've actually conducted 2 sessions of. It is recorded, and we'll be linking to it on our website. And then also the new OCA Court Interpretation Services Report, which we'll touch on in today's session. So there are these 3 distinct modules. They will all be able to be submitted individually, so that if you're ready to finish one, you can go ahead and submit it, but you don't have to wait to finish all the sections before you submit the report. So that's something new this year. Let's see. So in terms of what else is new this year, of course, the new website, we're going to have a new credentialing system for you to get login credentials to the new reporting website. One of the differences here that is important to note is that in the past, any user that had login credentials could log in and submit the report. Because of the statutory requirements specifically requiring that the county financial officer be responsible for the report, moving forward, any user that has login credentials can contribute to and populate data in the report, but we will need the designated financial officer, typically the auditor, him or herself, or the treasurer, to go in and do the final submission after the data is populated in the report. So you will be asked to get, if you currently have login credentials on the what we will call the legacy website or original IDER website, you will be prompted to get a new password. You'll already be in our system, but you'll be prompted to get a new password specifically for the new website, reporting website. And we'll touch on that in more detail in a moment. The main thing that's different about the way the report is organized, it is a question and answer structure, and you're guided through the report step by step with checklists. And previously, the report would present you with pages with many, many fields, a lot of which might not apply to your particular county, and you'd have to hunt for the data fields that were relevant for you and select them. What we've tried to do is ask you questions about your county to filter out the fields in the report that are not particularly applicable to your situation, so that you can focus right in on those fields that are relevant to you and that you need to submit. Another difference this year is we have contextual guidance throughout the report. So you'll see little green question marks throughout the pages of the new IDER section. If you hover over those little green circles, you will get definitions and guidance specific to that part of the report that you're looking at. So we think that that will be very helpful, as opposed to having to page back to the instruction manual and find what you're looking for. You should be able to get a lot of guidance and support right there on every page of the report. Another thing new this year, and this will only be relevant to some of the counties out there, is public defender and management assigned counsel staffing reports. We have a section of the public defender for counties that have public defenders or managed assigned counsel offices. We will be collecting data on the staff in your program, the salaries, the start dates, and terms of service of the various employees. All this data that we are collecting is going to be required for counties that are currently receiving TIDC improvement grants or sustainability grants. It will be optional for counties that are not seeing those, receiving those funds. We'll get into that again in more detail as well. Some of you may be familiar with a section of the old IDER called the Increased Administrative Expenditures section. Very few counties used this part of the report. It was optional. It didn't factor into any of the calculations for formula grants or anything. It's really outlived its usefulness, so that section has been removed. You won't see that section any longer. And then, of course, the other new part will be the new OCA Court Interpretation Services report that we will touch on today. So just from 20,000 feet, some highlights of what is new this year. But the vast majority of the data that you are going to be asked to submit will be the same data you've submitted in previous years. Some minor exceptions that may or may not apply to your county that we'll touch on as we go through. Okay, regarding the new Court Interpretation Services report that's required to be submitted to the Office of Court Administration. This is another new report that's required of all county financial officers in consultation with your district and county clerks. And we'll learn more about the nature of the data toward the end of the presentation today. In the 88th legislature, SB 380 and House Bill 3474 required this. It is a statutory requirement that the legislature has developed. It is a separate report to OCA, but as I mentioned, in order to simplify things for county auditors and treasurers, we just built on a module to our new IDER to streamline that reporting so that you have a one-stop shop to submit your data every year. And this report will collect expenditures on court-ordered interpretation services in criminal and civil proceedings. So I have a link here to the web, the instructions for that report, which are posted on OCA's website. But again, we will get into some of the details, and we'll be joined by some of our colleagues from the Office of Court Administration later in the presentation to go over that new report in some additional detail. So it's separate from the IDER, but for your convenience, we've built in a module so that you can have a one-stop reporting shop. All right, so just again, a high-level review of what data is reported on the criminal and juvenile delinquency IDER. There are two groups of data that you can think about. One of them would be countywide data, and the other would be court-specific data. So regarding the countywide data that you need to report to us would be payments to or received from participating counties in regional defender programs. For those of you who participate in a regional public defender office, you have historically reported the payments that you make to the host county, or if you're the host county, you report the payments you've received from the participating counties. One new thing this year is that you'll still report that data to us, but we're asking you to itemize the payments associated with regional public defender programs. You'll also be reporting different kinds of reimbursements that the county may have received for indigent defense expenses. Any funds collected from defendants are reported on a countywide basis, and these are collections specifically ordered by the court to repay indigent defense fees that are required of defendants. So some of your counties will have such collections or reimbursements. There is also a place to submit any reimbursements you might receive from the Texas Comptroller for death penalty post-conviction writs. That's relatively unusual, but there is a place to report it. And then if your county happens to receive any other indigent defense funding that is not from the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, there's a place for you to report that as well. That might be private foundation support. Sometimes it might be federal funding. And we do ask that you report that on a countywide basis. If your county does have a public defender office or a managed assigned counsel program, there is a section of the IDER that collects the operational expenditures, including salary and fringe benefits of the staff, all sorts of any kind of training, equipment, supplies, any of the operational expenses for a managed assigned counsel program or a public defender program are reported on a countywide basis, if that applies to your county. And then for those counties that provide what we refer to as limited scope representation in, or sometimes referred to as counsel at first appearance, if your county provides legal representation at 1517 magistration hearings or at automatic bail review hearings, there is a place to report such expenditures in the defendants represented on a countywide basis. The heart of the IDER really is collecting court-specific expenditures and cases. So for each court in your county that has indigent defense-related expenditures, you're asked to report the amounts expended, and those expenditures are categorized first by what type of counsel was involved, whether it was contract counsel, assigned counsel, attorney fees, etc. The expenditure type, so we ask you to break down attorney fees, investigation expenses, expert witness expenses, and other litigation expenses. And then also categorized by case type. So for example, non-capital felony, capital felony, misdemeanor, juvenile, appeals, etc. So those categories of expenditure are all divided in the court sections of the IDER, and you will need to make sure you track the expenditures according to those categories. And the other part of the data beyond expenditures is case counts. And what we're asking for on the criminal and indigent and juvenile delinquency section of the IDER is for you to report cases disposed and paid in each court. So that also will be categorized by case type, such as felony, misdemeanor, juvenile, etc., and counsel type. So public defender, managed assigned counsel, contract counsel, or assigned counsel. If your counties do not have a public defender, then based on the reporting that you'll see in some of the changes we've made, you won't even see the fields relevant to those categories. As I mentioned, what we've tried to do is filter out what is not relevant to your county so that you just see the data fields that are germane for your situation. So it's important to remember that only defense costs are eligible to be reported on the IDER for adult criminal cases and felonies and Class A and B misdemeanors and juvenile delinquency cases. And you should include attorney fees, any investigation expenses, investigator fees, expert witnesses, and other litigation expenses that are part of the defense that have been approved, typically will be approved by the court. A few reminders about what not to include in the juvenile delinquency and criminal section of the IDER. Any civil cases or expenditures, remember that all of your family protection appointments, any attorney appointments related to CPS or child protection cases filed by the Department of Family Protective Services are reported in the new family protection section of the IDER. Again, we developed a separate training for that since there are important differences in how that data is reported. You would also not include anything associated with Attorney General child support enforcement cases, which are civil matters. Nothing that's related to Class C misdemeanors. Also, competency to stand trial mental health evaluations are court expenditures as opposed to defense-specific expenditures. So those should not be included on the criminal and juvenile IDER. And any other general court expenses, such as court reporters or interpreters, should not be included. Remember, however, that expenditures for court interpretation services are collected now in the OCA report that we'll touch on at the end of our session today. But those types of court expenditures should not be included on your criminal and juvenile delinquency IDER. All right, before we jump into our demonstration, I just want to put up some contact information for you regarding questions you may have. If you have difficulty with your login process or difficulty, sort of technical issues with the website, we urge you to contact our partners at the Public Policy Research Institute who are handling our IT. There's an email address for you and a phone number. And then for questions regarding the report content on the juvenile delinquency and criminal sections of the IDER, please feel free to reach out to my colleague Deborah Stewart or myself. There are email addresses and phone numbers. We'll put this up again toward the end, but we're easy to find and happy to help you with questions. All right, so we are going to get ready to jump into the live demonstration of our new website, and very excited to show our new technology with you. One thing I want to note is that there will be a new website address that will open for you on October 1st. So if you go to this website address today, it won't be ready for you. You won't be able to get to it. But as of October 1st, the website that you will go to file your new IDER and the other related reports will be at tidc.it.tamu.edu. You Aggies out there will recognize that domain because the Public Policy Research Institute at Texas A&M hosts our technology. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Sarah Gamble, who is our Director of Research and Data, to begin our live demo, where we will walk through the new technology and give you a sense of the look and feel and how to navigate it and report. So, Dr. Sarah, why don't we jump in?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Edwin. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Before I get started, I too want to thank the Public Policy Research Institute at Texas A&M, who's done the lion's share of helping us create this data portal that will help us collect better data. And it's been an exciting process, and so we thank them for their work. But we do hope that this new website not only does get us better data in, it makes the process easier for all of you, and eventually we'll have more tools than you've had in the past to help share in your county. So this is the first screen that you will get into with the new web address. And I am logged out just like many of you would be. If you have folks in your county well, you should probably have folks in your county doing the attorney practice time report. It's the same website and they can access it with that click of that go. So to get into our website, if you are a current user in our legacy system, you simply click the login, forget password button. But first I'll show you, if you are not, we have the information here for how to request a new user. You just go to the TIDC at tamu.edu website. But in order to log in, you click this forget password button. You'll get an email notification. You'll get that taken care of, but I already have a password and we'll log in. The first screen here is the county dashboard for the IDERs. I will draw attention to, in this blue kind of panel, you may go back to the main screen you just left by clicking on the TIDC logo. If you need help at any point, you can click this Get Help button. It's got all of the emails that Edwin just provided to you and contacts for you to reach out to. And then as well, if you are responsible for multiple counties, you will be able to, drop down and select which county dashboard you need to start with for the IDER. At the top, we have some county information. I'll let you explain that county information, Edwin.
So the band at the top there is based on information that we already have at TIDC about what sorts of programs exist in your county. For example, public defender offices, managed assigned counsel offices, etc. If so, you will not be required to put this data in because we believe that we already know that. If for some reason we are wrong or you see something that doesn't look right, then please let us know. But that information in the top band is based on our understanding of the systems in place in your county today.
Thank you. And then just below that, you'll see the 3 modules that will take you into the data entry portion. We're going to focus on adult, criminal, and juvenile delinquency today. And then in a minute with our partners at OCA, they'll talk about the interpretation services. Family protection representation is also here. And then at the bottom is your submission status. And this, as well as most of the buttons in this, are dynamic and will change as you proceed through the steps. And so you can see that in Bexar County, nothing has been started. And this is test. So if there's someone from Bexar County, we're not going to be messing up your data. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and enter into the adult, criminal, and juvenile delinquency checklist. And you'll see 3 preliminary steps. Why don't you talk about that, Edwin?
Sure. So one of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward is making sure that each person who is logging into the system and populating data into the report has their own login credential. We know that it's been relatively common for folks to share passwords within an office. We're really trying to get away from that. As I mentioned earlier, the final submission step will have to be done by the designated financial officer, either the auditor or treasurer typically. However, any staff member can readily get a login and populate and contribute to the report. They just won't be able to actually submit it. So that partially kind of gives you the context for why these preliminary steps are necessary. We're going to be asking you to confirm who you are or whether you might be coming in with someone else's login and need to get your own login. Again, we're going to make that process very quick and easy. You shouldn't hesitate at all to get your own credential. And so, Sarah, do you want to jump in?
Absolutely. You are allowed to start at any of these 3 preliminary steps, but we're going to work left to right. So I'll draw attention to a few things and then pass it back over to Edwin. On the screen at the bottom, there are 3 different colored buttons: back to checklist, save progress, complete step. You will see those at the bottom of every page, and they will act the same way throughout the entire process for you. The first is back to checklists. So if you just kind of poked in and are checking out what this page is, no problem. You can back out to the checklist without anything changing for your data entry. Also, save progress if you decide to start entering some data and need to take a phone call, and you can click save progress. It'll save exactly what's been entered, and you can come back to it, or you can enter your portion of the data and somebody else in your office can do another. They can pick back up with a save progress. And then complete step, that is applicable for when you've entered everything, you've double checked yourself, you know that this step is done. It will turn it to green and take you on to the next steps. Edwin?
Just one thing to note about the complete step. If you do click complete step and then you decide you want to go back to that section to make a change, you can do that until the final submission process of the reporting. So just by clicking complete step, it doesn't mean that you can't return to a page. It just means that it will give you a green check mark if it looks good, and you can move on. After you do your final submission, if you recognize that changes are needed, you'll need to just contact TIDC and we can work with you. Also want to note the black button at the bottom of the screen, add note to TIDC. So there are several purposes that we've put this in for. Number one, this is a new website. If you have any feedback about the way the website works, this is a place where you can provide it, suggestions. We're going to be obviously working to make incremental and continual improvements to this as we go. And this is the first year. So if you have such feedback, you can use that add note to TIDC. Also, if on a page you're reporting data and there's something that you want to communicate, or you think that there's something unusual or some context that you would like to provide regarding the data that's being reported on a page, you can tell it to us in that by adding a note to TIDC. So you'll see that I think universally on all the pages and throughout the report where you can add a note. And again, those checklist, progress, and complete step boxes are also going to be kind of universal throughout each page of the report.
That's correct. So are we ready to move forward on this step? Okay, so I'll let you explain, but the question that it's asking is, are you whoever is logged in? This is an awkward name with research TIDC. Normally we'll have a name. If it is you, you're going to click yes and move on. But if it's not you, Edwin?
Yes, if say you signed in with, you borrowed your auditor's, you're a deputy auditor, you borrowed your auditor's login credential, and it's asking you if you need your own credential. So again, this is a very quick and easy process. Go ahead and say no, type in your information, and complete the step, and that will initiate getting you your own login credentials.
I'm going to say yes and complete the step. And you'll see the dynamic process that changed to green. So if you are tag teaming this with someone in your office, they'll know what has been completed. Okay, the next is confirm.
So far, it's very easy. You just have to know your name.
Yes.
It's going to get a little harder.
Go ahead, Edwin.
So in the next section, we're just trying to verify contact information for the financial officer in the county. That's typically going to be the auditor, or in counties without an auditor, the treasurer. If the information is correct that is there, you can confirm that. If it needs to be updated, there's a place to update that information. Secondly, we are asking if we do desk reviews of all this data. It's very valuable to us. We want to make sure that we work with you all to make sure that it's as accurate as possible. Sometimes we do have follow-up questions. We just want to check in with you regarding questions about the report. And we ask who should we check in with questions on regarding the report. If that's you, you can click yes. If it's someone else that we should follow up with, we just ask you to let us know who.
Okay.
And then you complete that step. And you'll get another green checkbox.
Moving on to the next.
So the attorney selection and accounting method questions are, again, countywide. And this is these questions are important because how you answer these questions is part of the filtering so that you only see the fields that are relevant to your county situation. We don't want to put a bunch of questions on your report if they don't really apply to you. So it's important to answer these questions carefully. The first several questions are just about what type of systems of providing indigent defense counsel your county uses. And the first one is pretty much universal. Does your county use assigned counsel? Almost every county is going to be using, I think every county is going to be using assigned counsel for at least some kinds of cases. And so that defaults to a yes answer. If you really think that it doesn't apply to any circumstances in your county, you could click no, but that would be very unusual. Secondly, you're asked if your county uses contract attorneys. And again, if you're not sure what that means, you can hover over the little green question mark and get a definition. Contract attorneys means an attorney receiving appointments to represent defendants or juvenile respondents under a contract with the county to provide criminal or juvenile delinquency representation. So whereas assigned counsel appointments are made on a case-by-case basis, typically from what is referred to as the wheel or the appointment list, contract attorneys have a contract for a set number of cases as opposed to being appointed case by case on a rotation. The next question is, does your county participate in the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases? Again, if you're not sure what that means, hover over that green question mark, but the RPDO for capital cases is a statewide program. It's an opt-in program for counties, except for the very largest counties in the state, which are not eligible. It was really designed for rural counties. And it's a program that in exchange for paying an annual participation fee, will provide legal representation in the event that your county happens to have a death penalty case. Death penalty defense can be extraordinarily expensive for counties, and this is a way to basically insure against what could be financially a major hit to the county. So if you're unsure about whether your county is part of that, you can always reach out to us. But we are asking if you participate in that program, because it will determine some of the fields that you see later. And then finally, just what accounting method does your county use? We've asked you this question on the report for many years. It's basically whether you use standard cash accounting, accrual-based accounting, some combination, which we would refer to as modified accrual, or other. If you're unsure how to answer that question, you can always reach out to us, but that's basically the same type of categorization that we've asked for in the past. Once you've answered those questions, you can complete the step. And again, the way you answer those questions will help to filter out some of the fields that might not be relevant for you later on in the report.
And even though it will not be true for Bear to participate in the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases, I'm going to say yes, so that we can see that appear later.
Right. And so as part of the demonstration, we're often saying yes to everything, so that we're going to be seeing in the demonstration all of the fields that are relevant to our selections early on in the report. Obviously, for many of your counties, when you select no to some of those questions, you will see fewer fields as you proceed through, and it filters out. So after you take those preliminary steps, you see that you've got some green check boxes. That's all pretty quick. That should only take you just a couple of minutes to do those preliminary steps. And we get into the other sections of the report that are related to your county. Again, you'll see here, managed to assign counsel expenditures, public defender expenditures. A lot of those won't apply to many, many counties, but if they do apply, you will see them here.
So I'll enter the court reports.
All right, so as we mentioned, the heart of the IDER is really collecting the reports regarding indigent defense expenditures and cases in each court in which you have indigent defense activity. There's two parts of the court report. There's the court report, and then the attorney level detail for each court that itemizes attorney fees and cases per attorney. You'll see that there's a link at the top of this list of courts for this county that provides an option for importing the attorney detail report that would be associated with each of the court reports. TIDC has developed an Excel template that some larger counties typically tend to use, that allows them to organize all their attorney level detail and upload that. It has to be formatted very carefully and precisely, and then that can be uploaded to the report and will populate the relevant attorney detail sections of each court report. So typically that kind of batch upload of attorney detail information makes sense for larger counties with many attorneys and many cases. For many smaller counties, it's probably simpler to just enter the attorneys individually in the report. But if you are interested in using the batch upload, there are instructions here, and the reporting template is linked for you to do that. However, most counties do not use the batch upload of attorney level detail. So I'll show you in one of our court report examples how to enter the attorney information line by line. So again, you see a list of all the courts that operate in your jurisdiction, or we believe that are relevant for your jurisdiction. If for some reason a court is missing, you can let us know. But you will not need to complete a court report for every court. Only the courts that have indigent defense or criminal or juvenile delinquency indigent defense activity will need to be reported. So if a particular court only handles civil matters, there's no juvenile delinquency or criminal, you don't need to complete a court report for that, just the ones that are relevant to the expenditures and cases for indigent defense. Terry, you want to jump into them?
Yes. And I will just draw attention that we've created on this court report page, just a way for you to track, that if where you'll enter data, their numbers will start to appear. So if you save progress, you'll know which courts to go back to. Not started, no problem. You can skip over them and save them in that state. So I will enter the 144th District Court.
So this really is where you see how the question and answer format filters out fields that are not relevant to your county. You're asked basically a series of questions for this particular court. Were there any juvenile delinquency cases in this court? If you say no, then you don't see fields related to that. But if you click yes, you would see a place to report data related to the juvenile delinquency cases in this particular court. Now, again, there are several rows that are showing here because of the way we answered the questions or the way that we have identified this county as having, for example, a public defender office or a managed assigned counsel program. If your counties don't have those programs, you won't see those rows here. But again, for demonstration purposes, we've kind of selected everything. But if you don't have those programs, you won't see the rows associated with those types of counsel. You would only see the ones that are relevant to based on how you selected your answers to the questions previously and what we know about the offices or programs that are operating in your county. So if we say no to juvenile delinquency, then that's going to collapse. You're asked about juvenile appeals, any capital murder cases in this county. If you click yes, again, you're prompted to provide data. You'll see that under the capital murder section, there is a place to report cases for the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases that I discussed earlier. You have a place to report the number of cases as well as any payments that you may have made to that program for expert witnesses or other litigation expenditures. This is something new in the report. Previously, if your county was in that situation where you had case-specific payments to the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases, there wasn't an obvious place to report those, and now there is. So if you have now, I want to just make a distinction between payments that would be made to the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases for the annual contract participation fee. Those are reported in a different part of the report that we'll get to shortly. This part of the report, inside the court report, you would only report payments that were related to specific cases that the program was handling in your county. And usually those are going to be payments associated with expert witness fees in death penalty cases. All right.
So for this court, we're going to say yes to adults non-capital felony cases. And we'll draw attention to, you will only answer what is relevant. And in the other places, you will need to put 0, and it's just a way of data verification to help you, not make any mistakes on where expenses and cases were not.
I do want to mention regarding the 0, Sarah, if you are working on a page in the report and you need to step away or you want to save your progress, you're allowed to save your progress without populating every field with a 0, for example, but you aren't able to do the final submission of a page, or rather complete the step on the page until all the fields are populated. So you can save data, but you won't be able to complete the step until all the fields are submitted.
And so now that I've completed everything relevant for the 144th for the court report, expenditures, I'm going to go to the attorney detail, which is at the bottom. When you click this, it will save your progress as well. Go ahead, Edwin.
So again, some large counties will use the batch upload template for their attorney level detail data submission. However, if you're not using that batch upload, you will enter the information for attorney. So in order to begin, you just click the Add New Attorney button. And just as with our old website, you enter in the attorney bar card number, and it should populate the attorney name. And then the first thing that you need to answer is the total attorney fees paid to that lawyer, again, in this court. So the attorney detail section is court specific, and each court report has an attorney level detail. Just think of the attorney level detail of the court report as an itemization per attorney of attorney fees and cases disposed. So here, Sarah has entered the bar card number, the name of the attorney, which is Tester, is automatically populated because we do have a database of attorney bar numbers rather. And she's indicated that $50,000 were paid to this lawyer in this court for attorney fees. And then the next fields are asking about which types of cases the attorney disposed in this court during this fiscal year. And Sarah's reported that this attorney handled 50 adult non-capital felony cases and no other types of cases in this particular court during the fiscal year. So $50,000 all in attorney fees. Again, the field for the dollar figure there is specific to attorney fees. So sometimes if if a payment is made to the attorney to reimburse the attorney, say for a contracted investigator or for some other litigation expenditures, those would not go in this field. Excuse me. Those would be reported on the court report, but we're very specifically asking for attorney fees here.
And I'm going to save that progress. And you'll see that the attorney name, Mr. Tester, all this information has been recorded. You do have the option to edit by clicking the pencil, and you do have the option to delete if for some reason you just need to start fresh again. You know, but it probably would not be common to have only one attorney handle all those cases. For the simplicity of this, we'll demonstrate it that way. But if you had another, you would just, you know, continue on to add a new attorney.
So you enter all the attorneys for this particular court, the number of cases by each type that they disposed, and then the total attorney fees, and then you're done with that court's attorney itemization.
And you'll see when you complete, if you save the attorney detail report for last, you can complete the step for this court. And the page that was previously blank now shows the summary and a balance between your attorney fees and cases. For simplicity, Edwin, what if I just went in here and showed them what it would look like if there was something that did not balance?
That's a good idea.
I'm gonna just say that this was 100,000. And I'm going to complete the step, leaving my attorney detail report the same.
So you see that the status of that court report has turned red and says needs review. And that's because it's identifying that the attorney fees that are reported in the court report are not reconciling with the itemization of attorney fees and the attorney detail. So in this particular instance, the attorney detail, the total sum of attorney fees reported is 50,000, but on the court report, we've got 100,000. So maybe we forgot to add some lines to our attorney detail that would explain that discrepancy, and that's why the court report is turned red, because the attorney fees should reconcile.
And if you miss that, there's also a note at the bottom, and you'll see that you cannot complete the step. So if you get frustrated and say, why can't I complete this step? You know, go back up and just see what needs review. And so for simplicity, I'm going to bring this one back down to 50,000 so that we can move forward in the demonstration. And we're back to green. And a poor assumption, Bear only had one court and one type of cases and one attorney. But if you're comfortable, Edwin, I'll go ahead and complete this step to show the other.
So you'll repeat this a number of times for the number of courts that you have. Some of you will have only 2, county court and a district court. Some of you big counties have a lot. But it's not different data, Generally speaking, it's just a different way to be walked through and prompted to report the data that we've asked you for a number of years.
When you do complete, and that will probably be the most time-consuming step, you are allowed to pick up anywhere on this checklist. I'm going to pick up on reimbursements. How do you feel about that, Edwin?
That's good. It's something that all counties will occur on all county reports. So we touched on this earlier. If you get reimbursements of your indigent defense expenditures from some source other than TIDC, we're collecting that data here in this part of the report. I mentioned a very specific scenario where if you have a death penalty case and there is a stage of appeal called a post-conviction writ that is not handled by the statewide public defender, but private counsel, your county may receive some reimbursement from the comptroller, directly from the comptroller, not through TIDC, for those types of expenses. It's unusual, but if you did receive those, there's a place to answer yes and report that dollar figure here. The vast majority of your counties will not have any expenditures of that type, or rather reimbursements of that type. Next, did your county collect any reimbursements of indigent defense costs from defendants? So this is a very specific question regarding when a court orders a defendant, typically upon conviction, to repay some portion or all of the indigent defense costs associated with their case, then those amounts collected need to be reported in this section. We're not talking about the total amounts of fines that are paid, but specifically reimbursements of indigent defense costs that would have been ordered by a court following a determination, of course, that the person is able to pay and is not indigent. So there's a place to report reimbursements of indigent defense costs collected from defendants. And then finally, if there's any other source of indigent defense funding your county received, we ask you to tell us how much you received and what the source was. So it might be that a private foundation provided a grant to the county for some new program, indigent defense program. It may be a federal grant that your local jurisdiction received directly. Whatever it is, there's a place to report it here. One thing that we do not want you to include in that box is money that you've received from TIDC. We know how much we've given you, and so we don't ask you to include money from TIDC here, but just from any other private or government grants for indigent defense. If you're unsure of whether something should be included there, please feel free to ask. And you can complete that step and get another green checkbox on the checklist.
Shall I go to regional indigent defense programs?
Let's go to regional. So I mentioned there are a couple of sections of this report because at the beginning of the report, we selected yes to do you participate in the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases. We're seeing a place to report our annual participation payments to that program in this section of the report. Previously in the IDER, all your payments for regional public defender programs or regional indigent defense programs were all lumped together and reported in one box, in one field on the old report. One thing that's new is we're asking you to itemize those payments because we're comparing the amounts that are reported as received from the operators of those programs and the amounts of money paid by each of the participants of those programs. So we ask that you itemize each payment that you've made for this program. With respect to the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases, in most instances, you're going to have one annual payment. Sometimes, because of the timing around the beginning or end of the fiscal year, you might have two payments fall within a fiscal year, and so you have a place to put each of them for the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases. Again, this section should only report payments for your annual participation fee or your contract fee for being a part of the Regional Public Defender for capital cases, not any case-specific payments, for example, for expert witness expenses. If you had those kinds of expenses, they would be reported in the relevant court report under capital felony cases in the RPDO section. So this would only be for your participation costs.
And if you realize that this is an error, you need to go back to that attorney selection step and click the no.
Right.
And
So if your county does not participate in this program and you're seeing these fields, the only reason that you're seeing this section is because you answered yes at the beginning of the report that our county does participate in the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases. If you clicked no, you wouldn't see these fields. All right, and then so there's two kinds of regional indigent defense programs. There's the statewide program for death penalty cases, and then there are and we got non-capital regional public defender offices that many of your counties participate in, and some of your counties are hosts of. And this is the section where you would report those collections or payments related to non-capital regional public defender offices. So the first thing that's being asked is if you're
this is a bit manufactured because Bear is a host, but they host themselves. So they wouldn't get this question because they would report this differently, but we manufactured this so they would.
Right.
You know, so you'll get a drop down if you are a host of all the counties that are associated with your office. In this case, it's just Bear since we manufactured it.
We would select the county that the host county of a regional public defender office is the county that's operating the program, and that participating counties enter into interlocal agreements to be a part of. And we want to make sure that we track the payments to in this case, to the host county, which for our example purposes is Bear County, and what payments were made. Many counties will pay on a quarterly basis if they participate in a regional program. I understand that some counties are paying monthly, but again, we are asking you to itemize all the payments that you make to participate in a regional public defender office so that we can do that reconciliation. The reason that we're doing that is to make sure it's very common for counties to miss claiming these expenditures, which are eligible. And the more eligible expenditures you claim, the higher your formula grant will be. So we want to make sure that all of your eligible expenses are captured, and this is the best way to do it. So that's where you would submit payments. Say you pay twice a year is your arrangement with your county. You can put your first payment in with the date and then add a payment. And again, who is the payment to? You select that, the date of the payment and the amount.
And I will say, if you are a participant, you will get the converse, the inverse, the opposite of this. You will be telling the days that you paid the host.
Right.
We couldn't manufacture both on this, sorry.
Okay, so limitation of the demonstration, but the main idea here is that you're prompted to report payments to regional programs and amounts received if you are a host county. And it's the same data that you've been reporting and tracking previously. The big difference is that it's itemized by payment so that we can make that reconciliation and ensure that all of the eligible expenditures are included. There's also a place here to report if you're a host county unobligated fund balances or carryover amounts. That will apply to some counties, but not all. If it applies to you, you can do it. And that's the Regional Indigent Defense Program section. Again, the same data, just itemized. All right.
Limited scope.
Let's go to limited scope representation. So a handful of counties in Texas, but a growing number of counties provide a limited scope representation to defendants either at the Article 1517 magistration hearing, which is the first appearance before a judge following arrest, or in automatic bail review hearings. And we call this limited scope representation because attorneys are assigned to provide counsel to defendants in those circumstances, specific to the question of release and bail conditions, but not representing them on the underlying case and the reason for their arrest and on the underlying charges. So it's a limited scope representation for a specific purpose that does not include representation on the underlying case and charges. If your county is one of the growing number that provides this type of representation, this is the place where you report any expenditures and the number of defendants that were represented. And you can see how it's broken down. So the rows of this section. So the first question is, did Bexar County provide any limited scope defense representation at Article 1517 magistration hearings? If in your county you don't do that, you just click no, you move on. If the answer is yes, you will see rows associated with the types of ways that your program or your county provides counsel to defendants. You'll only see the rows that are relevant to your situation. For most of you, that will just be the assigned counsel row. But if you have a public defender or a MAC or contract counsel, you'll also see those rows. And the first thing that you report here is the total amount of attorney fees that would be expended specifically for that type of limited scope representation, and then the number of defendants that were represented in those programs. And then you can move on to the next question. And this is a slightly different version, but did your county provide any limited scope representation in automatic bail review hearings? Again, limited scope meaning that the attorney that would be providing representation at an automatic bail review hearing was not also tasked with providing representation on the underlying charges, but just for purposes of bail and release. And if your county says, no, that doesn't apply to us, you don't see these fields and you move on. But if it does, you're asked to report the number of cases and the amounts of attorney fees paid. One additional point I want to make here, you will see that for the public defender office, there's no place to report attorney fees, but there is a place to report the number of defendants reported. That's because the report is going to capture expenditures from a public defender office in a different part of the report that we'll get to shortly. But you will still be reporting the number of individuals, defendants represented by, for example, a public defender in this type of hearing. All right. And then, so for many of you, that section will not apply, but if it does apply to you, so you just answer no to those questions and you don't have to populate any fields. If it does apply to you, you have a place to report those expenditures and the number of defendants, and then you can complete the step. All right. Well, you can choose, Sarah.
Let's go to the MAC. I like left to right.
Okay. So again, a handful of counties in Texas operate a managed assigned counsel program. We know which counties have these types of programs, and so we've coded it into the report so that if your county does have that kind of program, you will see this section. If your county doesn't have that kind of program, you won't see this section. If you think you should see this, but you don't see it, contact TIDC, but I don't think we're missing anyone yet. Okay, so when you get into the managed assigned counsel addendum, which will apply only to a relatively small number of counties that have that type of program. The first part of, and this is collecting slightly more granular information about the expenditures of a MAC than we've collected previously. The first thing that you're asked to do is to allocate the personnel costs, including salary and fringe benefits, across categories of employee. And those categories are attorneys, investigators, mitigation specialists, any mental health professionals such as social workers or mental health caseworkers, and then other administrative personnel. So across those categories, you're asked to allocate the overall personnel expenditures. And again, you can always hover over those green tooltips to populate this data.
And it may not be real, but everybody's getting 10,000 in this world, in this virtual world. But just to demonstrate that these totals will accrue for you so that you can check your math.
So you've allocated, if you have a managed assigned counsel program, you're prompted to allocate your total personnel expenses, including salary and fringe, across these categories of staff. And then the next part of the report is just asking for the other costs associated with operating the managed assigned counsel program. So any staff travel and training, any equipment purchases for that program, other direct operating expenditures, which would include supplies and miscellaneous types of expenditures, and total up. And the idea is to capture the total operational expense of the managed assigned counsel program, both personnel expenses and non-personnel expenses. So again, this will only apply to a handful of counties, and you won't see it if it doesn't apply to you, but if it does, that's how you do it. And you can complete the steps. All right, then similarly, we have the Public Defender Office addendum. The counties that will see this would be either host counties of regional programs or single county public defender programs. If you are a participating county in a regional public defender office, you will not see the public defender addendum. You will just have a place to report the number of cases in each court that the public defender handled for you. But this would only be for host counties of regional programs or for counties with a single county public defender office. And again, going back to the filtering Q&A method of homing in on exactly what we need to collect from your particular county, you're asked a series of questions. So the first part of the public defender addendum is allocating personnel expenditures across types of cases, meaning felony, misdemeanor, juvenile, etc., and also categorized by type of employee. So if your public defender office handled juvenile delinquency cases, let's say no for this one, and let's just say no for juvenile appeals, but let's say and no for capital. But let's say yes for adult non-capital felonies, and let's also say yes for adult misdemeanors. And let's say that your public defender office only handles those two categories of cases: no juvenile, no capital murder, no appeals, and no limited scope representation. Well, if for the categories of cases that your program does handle, you're asked to allocate the personnel expenditures across these categories. And the manual, excuse me, the IDER manual will provide guidance on how to perform that allocation. But basically, any reasonable method, whether looking at cases or the way that particular staff are assigned to particular dockets, can be used to estimate and allocate the personnel expenditures across these categories. Again, you say no to the types of cases that your public defender office does not handle, and you're not prompted and you don't even see those fields. After you allocate the personnel expenditures in the public defender addendum, you're asked to report all other operational costs associated with the public defender office, again, specific to the criminal juvenile delinquency operation. And so you see the running totals here of personnel that have populated, and then places to populate all non-personnel expenditures such as travel and training, equipment, other direct operating expenditures, which are varied and include supplies and miscellaneous expenses. If your program had an expert witness expenditures or any non-staff or contracted investigators, you could report that here, and other direct litigation expenditures that are eligible under the TIDC rules. If your program does have an approved indirect rate, and this is similar to the way that we've been collecting data from public defender offices for many years, the same data fields will be populated for indirect expenditures. And so that the content of the public defender addendum has not changed at all. Only the method and the way that you're prompted to populate the fields has changed, but it will be the same public defender addendum, just formatted differently. And you'll see all the figures that you populate total up at the bottom. And when you've entered it all, you can complete the step. Again, only will be seeing this if it is relevant to your county. And then one of the things that I mentioned that is new this year is public defense office salaries. So TIDC has been for several years now collecting data on public defender salaries. As many of you know, one of our main areas of work is working with local jurisdictions that would like to create public defense offices. We do planning studies, and we are in desperate need of good and reliable and comprehensive data in order to develop budgets for these programs. And so as part of that effort, we are collecting data on public defense salaries. And Sarah, if you want to click into that. Again, you will only see this if your program, or rather your county, has a managed assigned counsel office or a public defender office. If you don't have one of those programs, you won't see this. It wouldn't be applying to you. If you have several offices, you'll see an option to complete this information for each. In the case of Bexar County, they have both a PD and a managed assigned counsel office. and you click in. And the first thing that you'll be prompted to do is enter.
Sorry,
That's okay.
keep going.
Okay. So the first, there are two parts of entering the public defense salary data. One of them will be to populate position types, and the other will be to populate the details of individuals. And so, for example, if you click into the particular employees, this is empty as it starts, but you go to the position list first to add categories of employees. And it looks like we may need to.
This is the one thing we're finishing up, so.
Yeah, we're still doing some final coding on
But you'll
this.
see a button that says add employees and then, or add positions and then add employees. And so you could choose to start either way. Better to start with adding the positions. So if you have, for example, 2 administrators, you would say what their salaries are, their minimum, their maximum, and how many. And then when you go to the add employees, you'll actually add their names and associate the employees with the positions created. It's a pretty, seamless process.
So you'll first create position types, and then you'll add individual information, individual data after you set up the position types. Now, one thing to note for this section of the report is that it is required if you are receiving TIDC sustainability grants for your public defense program or managed assigned counsel program. It is optional if you are not currently receiving improvement grants or sustainability grants from TIDC. However, the data is enormously helpful to us. It may be mandatory down the road for you, but currently, if you're not receiving sustainability or improvement funding for your public defender, would be optional. All right.
Oh,
so obviously the auditors are responsible for the report, but for those sections of the report that relate to the public defender office or for the managed assigned counsel program, the auditor or treasurer will need to coordinate with the public defender or managed assigned counsel office on some sections of these to be able to populate the relevant data. So there will be some coordination between those two actors required. All right, let's complete that step, sir. You see a lot of green check boxes, which is what you want to see. Again, you won't see everything on this particular screen. You'll only see those sections relevant to you. And when you get to the you see a lot of green check boxes, you know you're making good progress.
And when you have completed, so this text up here is dynamic. It will tell you always how many you have left, but it has changed and it's congratulated you for completing all the steps. Additionally, when all the steps are complete, a new button will appear to review and finalize. I will say you can still go in at this point to anything and review each screen by screen, each step on the checklist, but you also may use this button here to see the entire submission on the screen, or to download it, print it out, match your numbers on paper that way. Either way, to review. You can click back to the checklist to return back to fix a mistake, update something. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to say, I'll just say this. So if you are the auditor that is logged into the system, our system knows you are the auditor, and a green box will appear that says certify. And that, since I am not the auditor of BEAR, I don't get that green box. But when the auditor does, they will see that and they will be able to review, print it out, click. But once they click that certify green button, that is the point of no return. At least that is the point that the data comes over to TIDC for our review, and we can open it and kick it back. So go ahead, Edwin.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, any user, any staff in your office can contribute to the report. Sometimes you have several people that are involved. They'll each have their own login credentials. When everything is ready for each module, then the financial officer, typically the auditor, will need to log in him or herself and click the final certification submit button, which sends it over to us. Again, that step is for each module. So you'll have that step for the criminal and juvenile delinquency section, which is our focus today. You'll have a similar step for submitting the module for family protection or CPS case, data. And then there will be a submission for what we'll pivot to in just a moment, which is the OCA Court Interpretation Services module. So 3 modules in this reporting environment, and each will be submitted separately by the financial officer.
So I'm going to go back to the main dashboard and assume that we've completed our job in adult criminal, and pass it over if Edwin's okay to
Yes.
OCA.
I see that we're joined by our colleague from the Office of Court Administration, Lisa Robles, and we may have some of her colleagues on as well. I just can't see them on the screen yet. But Lisa, welcome. Thanks for being here. And I think we are going to pivot over to the new OCA Court Interpretation Services section of the reporting.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and pull up my presentation brief. And I am also joined by Angela Garcia, who is our Chief Data Officer. She's going to be helping with questions in the chat. My name, again, is Lisa Robles, and I am the manager with the Data and Research Division. You may also know us as Judicial Information. We work with data, basically. We're always collecting data and information, and often work with TIDC to just make sure that counties are in compliance regarding reporting requirements and that they're getting their grant funds because they're reporting to us. So very happy to be here. Let me go ahead and try to share this screen, and I'll ask you all if you can see everything. So let me just bring it over here. And oh, right. So do you
You are muted now, Lisa.
unmute? Great. Do you see my screen, which has the black, or do you just see the white presentation screen? We're good. Fantastic. All right. So, like stated, we're going to go over the Court Interpretation Services Report. This was passed in the last legislative session, and it applies to county auditors or designated individual. Within this slide, it says County and District Clerks Report, which is kind of confusing. Received, questions from clerks who are like, well, do I have to actually report this? No, the responsibility is of the county auditor, or if there is a designated individual, say their county commissioner's court decides to appoint a person to work on this particular report. It is in consultation, and you can see on the statute, it says in consultation with the county and district clerks. So getting some of this information may require, consulting with the clerks, processes, and that's a lot of the questions that we get of how to obtain this information. Going to the reporting basics, the frequency of this report is annually. So once a year, the report will be submitted, and it covers a full year, October 1st to October 1st of 2023 of last year to September 30th of this year is the first report. So next week, you'll be able to actually get this report submitted if you have all the information. Subsequent reports will cover the same timeline. It's October 1st through September 30th. And the due date will be November 1st. You have a little bit of time to submit. Unlike most OCA reports that are submitted, this one actually is in the TIDC Auditor Reporting Portal. We're really happy that TIDC gave us some room within that portal. It looks great. And also, hopefully, it will help streamline this report because it is being reported by the auditor. So you're already in that portal. Go ahead and get this submitted for the year. Take care of it. It's green and good. I wanted to bring your attention, if you had any questions regarding this report, we always want to go back to the guidance that is posted online. If you go to the judicial branch website, which is txcourts.gov, There's a drop-down menu for judicial data, then reporting to OCA, and the court interpretation service is new. You can always search, do the site search. I do that often. I'm like, where do I find things? There's so much information. Site search for the court interpretation services. You should be able to, very quickly pull up this page. So this page includes our instructions, which kind of just go over what is included in the statute, but also we have our FAQ document. I highly recommend, before you submit this report, going to that FAQ document, going through some very specific scenarios that were, given to us as questions. We're doing our best to update that document based on new information that comes to us. This is a new report for you all, but it's also a new report for us. So sometimes there are just some situations that we didn't consider. So we'll go ahead and update the FAQ document based on, the information that you all provide so that we can just make sure that everyone's on the same page. We also have a sample template. One of the questions that we had gotten multiple times over the last year in regards to this report was, how do I keep track of this information? And so we decided to create an Excel spreadsheet and a PDF, whichever you prefer, so that you can enter that information, just keep it on your side, and then at the end of the year, enter it into the TIDC portal. Going into a little more detail regarding the reporting requirements, this is for district court and county court cases only. We have the 4 reporting elements, and they apply to the civil, criminal, and juvenile case categories. Civil will include tax, family, probate, guardianship, and civil mental health commitments. We have the number of interpreters appointed or used, the number of interpreters appointed or used for parties or witnesses who are indigent, the total expenditures, and that's county expenditures for court-ordered interpretation services, and the number of parties that filed a statement of inability to afford payment for costs. This slide goes a little further into it. So for the number of interpreters appointed or used, it's going to be during the entire fiscal year. And we've received questions about employees or those who are contracted interpreters. It'll be the total number of interpreters employed or contracted, regardless of the length of time or when they were contracted during the fiscal year. For the number of interpreters appointed or used who are indigent, oftentimes counties are not able to collect this information. So if that information is not tracked, you're going to go ahead and enter unknown. The total expenditures for court-ordered interpretation services, for counties that are employing or contracting with interpreters, you're going to include salaries and fringe benefits for the entire fiscal year, regardless of the length of time. Once again, it doesn't matter if they only came in, for a particular date or, in a particular month, it's just the total. And for the number of parties filing statements or affidavits of inability, you're can refer to Rule 145 of the Rules of Civil Procedure in regards to this statement of inability to afford payment of court costs. And for juvenile and criminal proceedings, it's the number of parties that have filed an affidavit of indigency in cases where an interpreter was appointed or used. So this is the sample spreadsheet that we provided on the OCA website. It has every single month and each of the reporting categories so that you can keep track of this. I think that the biggest question has been, how do we create a process for this? Well, this document can be part of your process. And then, in consultation with the clerks, how do you get this information? I've spoken to clerks who have said, well, we don't know how to assist, we don't keep that information. You're going to report what you're able to report. If there are zeros, so be it. If you don't collect that information or if it's unknown, just do the best that you can. For subsequent years, hopefully you can create processes to track this information. But we recognize that this is the first year, and there might be some processes that need or reporting that needs to take place that may just not have been done over the last year. All right, so we go to the TIDC portal, and on the bottom left side, we're going to have OCA interpreters report. You can get started with that one. You're going to submit by November 1st, and you'll go ahead and get started, and you'll have your county. We have this handy first page to go over what the report actually is, and the last sentence includes reporting instructions. So if you want to go back to the reporting page, please do. We want the information to be as accurate as possible. There's just a hyperlink there that's found here. You can always reference those reporting instructions before you actually submit the report. Each question is really tailored to whether you're collecting this information or not. So if you click no, you won't get these prompts. If you click yes, then you have these reporting questions of the total number of interpreters. We also have these handy little question circles that will give you more information. This was really designed to provide you with the most information so that you can report accurately. The next one goes on to the number of interpreters appointed or used for indigent parties or witnesses. Once again, if it's unknown, it's unknown, and that's no fault of the county, but you will be able to add whatever is relevant for your county into this reporting portal. The third one is expenditures for court-ordered interpretation services. Total expenditures, you'll just include what totals you have. Lastly, it's the number of statements or affidavits of inability to pay, and you'll include the information that you have there. So when you finish that up, you're going to be directed to this page where if you have any questions, you can contact our division at jedinfo@txcourts.gov. That's the best way of contacting us, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. I actually think that's the last slide, but we just encourage you to review the instructions and frequently ask questions. And if you can't find, there's a very specific scenario and you can't find that information, go ahead and email us. But I will ask, I'll end this slideshow and ask if there's any questions right now.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I guess, Kristen, are you going to be covering the questions for us? Great, thank you.
Yes, thanks everybody. Hi, my name is Kristen Meeks and I'll be leading the Q&A session here. Just as a little reminder for everyone who's in attendance, if you have a question that has popped up throughout this session that you want answers on, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So go ahead and click that and submit your questions. I'm going to start going through the questions in the order that they have come in. We have a question from Letitia Carpenter who says, our county started contract attorneys in the middle of the year. How will that be reported on the IDER? Edwin.
Sure. So the first thing you will want to do when you are answering those preliminary questions for the fiscal year, you're going to want to say yes to contract attorneys as one of the types. Many counties are going to have a number of different ways that indigent attorneys are appointed in criminal and juvenile delinquency matters. So you can have more than one. And in many cases, you might have contract attorneys and assigned counsel attorneys. So you would answer yes to the contract and probably yes to assigned counsel. And then for those cases, the invoices that your contract attorneys submit are required to include the number of cases disposed. So those payment records will give you the number of cases that each attorney has handled in a particular court. They need to be, all the data needs to be categorized by court, and then the expenditures can be allocated accordingly. Deborah, do you want to add anything about contract attorney reporting beyond that?
Yeah, Letitia, as Edwin mentioned, that each as far as contract account rules are, the attorney should be submitting a voucher on I assume a monthly basis if that's how he's getting paid, and that voucher should have you pay probably the same amount each month, but the amount paid. But then he also has to list the cases disposed. So that's where you get your information. If he's not doing that, then you've got to go back to him and get that information from him. But you'll just count up all those vouchers. If there's 12, like if you put 25 cases disposed in March, and then you add, April and go on, and then you just put that dollar amount there. I mean, not the dollar amount. You put the number of cases in the case box for that attorney. The dollar amount paid through the year for that attorney will be the dollar amount. It should be that simple. But yeah, it's all going to depend on if your attorney submitted the monthly vouchers with the cases disposed on there. So that's what you need to have.
Occasionally, if an attorney is handling a mixed caseload, there will need to be some allocation of the monthly cost, say between felony and misdemeanor, because the reports do require that we break down the expenses. And so if you have questions about how, if that's the case, if the contract does not cover just one type of case representation, please feel free to give us a call and we can discuss with you how a good method to allocate expenses across different types of cases, which is one tricky thing related to contract representation.
Brilliant. With that, we've got another question. We've got a few questions from Wendy. The first one is regarding collections received from defendants. And the question is asking about if a county is collecting both pre-judgment and post-judgment reimbursement of indigent defense cost, should the pre-judgment payments also be reported, or is it just the cost ordered to be repaid as part of the judgment, those post-judgment reimbursements? Edwin?
So I think if the court has ordered reimbursements of indigent defense fees pre-judgment, which I think is somewhat unusual, but perhaps not. I think that those would be captured as well. Any collections from defendants specifically for reimbursement of previously paid indigent defense costs would be reported in that field of the report. So pre and post judgment. Deborah, does that sound right to you? I think so.
Sorry, I unmuted. Yes, Edwin, that was perfect.
Okay.
Sounds exactly right. So.
We're trying again. There we go. Much better. Apologies, everyone. Our next question is dealing with limited scope representation costs, so that module. And the question was, should counties include specialty diversion courts in that limited scope representation cost section? Examples include Veterans Treatments Court, Drug Court, DWI Court, or do those just go in the regular court reports? Edwin?
So those would not be included in limited scope representation section of the report. You would include those in the regular court report. All of those types of specialty court programs are going to be operating under the auspices of one of your courts in the county, and that's the court where you would report those related expenditures.
All right, another question here. This one is about cost to the counties associated with county employees who work in an office of indigent defense. The question is there any intention to include cost of county employees who work in these offices, I guess in the reporting, conducting, and examples of employees doing said work would include conducting defendant interviews and appointing attorneys. That kind of sounds like a indigent defense coordinator position to me. Edwin?
So no, this report will not capture those kinds of expenditures related to county staff that are doing work associated with qualifying defendants or screening them or making appointments, such as indigent defense coordinators or court coordinators that have those types of responsibilities. Those types of expenditures are sometimes eligible for TIDC grant funds, in particular for indigent defense expenditure report. For indigent defense coordinator positions, but they are not defense-specific reports that would be captured on the IDER.
Great. All right. We have another question here. This one's from Sherry. She's asking about the OCA interpretation report. The question is, in their county, the judge uses language line yesterday on a magistration. And the county, they don't receive an invoice until October. Do we count the interpreter in this year without the expenditure? So there's the question of when the actual action occurred versus when they get invoiced for that action. Lisa or Angela?
I think they should go ahead and include that in the October, so for the October time period, because there's no way that you would know in September.
All right, simple answer. We love those. The next question we have is from Carmen. We've got a couple here. The first one is, are we counting, and this is OCA Interpreter's Report, are we counting the individual interpreter, the person, or are we counting the vendor that we pay?
It's going to be the person. So it's a total number of interpreters, not the vendors or any particular, contractor.
Brilliant. We got another question here. This one is about the IDER. There's a question that says, do we have the option to upload a file for the attorney detail report, or do we have to manually input each attorney? Edwin?
So you do have the option to do a batch upload of all of your attorney level detail information for each of the court reports. If that's something, if you have a lot of them and that's something that sounds like a good idea to you, there is a template. It's an Excel template that categorizes the data in a very specific format that allows you to send in, to upload that Excel sheet and have that data populate. You will find a link to that Excel template in the report, but also it is available on our website. Currently, the template has not changed. So for those counties that have been doing the batch upload of attorney detail data, you will continue to use the same format. If it's something that you'd like to start doing, you can find the template on the tidc.texas.gov under reporting in the IDER section. I believe we don't have our new manual posted just yet. It's very close to being posted, but the template is the same and is available there. And if you need any technical assistance on getting your data formatted, feel free to reach out to us. But the one thing I will say about doing the batch upload of attorney detail data is it is very important to make sure that the data is categorized precisely as according to the template Excel sheet in order for it to work properly and for the data to be coded to the right courts.
It's a great point, Edwin. Our last question that we have right now, so those who are in attendance, if you have a question, but you've been waiting to put it in, or some discussion has prompted another one to pop in your head, go ahead and put it in that Q&A. Our last question we have right now is about the interpretation services report. And it's asking, do we include interpretation services related to magistration?
Yes, but only for district and county cases. So if it's a justice court case or municipal court case, you would not count those.
All right. Oh, we got another one on interpreters. This one's from Wendy. Do you only want each interpreter counted once, regardless of the number of times the interpreter was used?
So that depends on the situation. If you're a county that is using interpreters on a case-by-case basis, you would count the number of appointments made. So if a person has 20 appointments, you would count them 20 times. You do not want to count how many hearings they've done, but how many appointments they've gotten. If you're using a contract or employee system, you would just count the person once.
All right. That's all the questions that I see right now. I am going to make a note of a key date. That date is October 1st. That's when everything opens up and you'll be able to see the website. You'll also should expect to be able to access all those resource documents we've kind of been talking out throughout this session. I am going to turn it back over to Edwin to see if he has any other thoughts here, but don't let it stop you. If you have a question, get it in here before we wrap up for today. Edwin?
I just want to thank everyone for signing on to the webinar. Remember that we have only been focused very specifically today on the criminal juvenile delinquency sections of the IDER and the OCA interpreter report. We also have a separate recorded session on family protection or CPS IDER that we encourage you all to check out. There are enough differences there to where we needed to break it into 2 separate trainings. That family protection training, as well as the recording of this one, will be posted or linked from our website and on our YouTube channel soon. Again, the updated manual will be out very soon, but I just want to thank all my colleagues for joining me today. Dr. Sarah Gamble, Angela Garcia, Deborah Stewart, Kenitra Brown, Lisa Robles, and Kristen Meeks, and everybody at the Public Policy Research Institute who's been working very hard with us to update our technology to help your reporting process run more smoothly and be more user-friendly. It's a work in progress, and we intend to continue to work with them. So remember to provide feedback as you are working through the report, and we'll take it all into consideration and do what we can to continue to improve the system. So thank you all very much for signing on. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And Kristen.
And we've got one more question that came in, and the attendees want to know, will slides be available? Yes.
We will publish the slide decks for our presentations as well as the recording of the Zoom webinar on our website. Great question. Yeah, please ask questions if you have them. We're happy to help you. I know there are a lot of unique situations or things that are new to your particular county, and in those circumstances, please don't hesitate to contact us to get some guidance as you may have, your county may have had some changes in the way it's doing things. We're happy to work with you to help you know what to expect as your report comes up. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Happy to roll out this new technology. I hope it's going to make things easier for you, and we'll be here when you need us. Thanks very much.